meeting, Zero Waste Subcommittee meeting to order. First item, Madam Clerk.
Yes, we are going to go to the adoption of the agenda.
All right. I guess we need roll call too. So we have Commissioner Sacco, Commissioner Ward, and Commissioner Ariola is absent. Okay. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
All right. Second, motion by Commissioner Sacco and seconded by Commissioner Ward to adopt the agenda. Any discussion on that? All right, seeing none, I'll put it to a vote.
Okay, Commissioner Ward.
Aye.
Commissioner Sacco.
Aye.
Commissioner Ariola is absent, and Chair Jesus Santos.
Aye. All right, next item. That passes 3-0 with Commissioner Ariola absent. Next item.
The next item is the approval of the minutes 200328 with the recommendation that the subcommittee approve the minutes.
Move approval of minutes.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Ward and a second by Commissioner Sacco to adopt the minutes from the last meeting. Is there any, I guess we'll move forward on a vote.
Commissioner Sacco.
Aye.
Commissioner Ward.
Aye.
Commissioner Ariola is absent. Chair Jesus Santos.
Aye. All right, motion passes 3-0. Commissioner Ariola absent. All right, next item.
Okay, the next item is 200413, the solid waste franchise contract with the recommendation that the Zero Waste Subcommittee hear staff presentation and provide direction as appropriate.
All right. Who's taking it, Mr. Feldman or Mr. Himbach? Who's taking, or Mr. Mann?
I'll go ahead and do the presentation.
Okay.
And, any questions, feel free to pop in there. And I think that's working. All right, so we've been having discussions here on staff and with some of you commissioners about moving towards an exclusive solid waste franchise because of certain benefits, especially as it relates to zero waste. So I've got a PowerPoint, points out some of the positives, some of the negatives, and we can take it from there. So we'll just go over the kind of the current status that we have as it relates to commercial and multifamily operations here in the city. The city franchises private haulers to collect garbage, and these franchises run from fiscal year to fiscal year. They submit their paperwork, they get renewed, we reissue that franchise, and they continue to operate in the city. The current ordinance has no limit on the number of franchises, so essentially anybody that can meet the minimum requirements to get a franchise can get one. Our requirements are not particularly difficult, and as long as they have the insurance and the proper equipment, they can go ahead and operate in the city. So we have 4 companies operating in the city. WCA, who's also our...
Do you want to change slides? We're still stuck on the first slide.
Oh, no, I did.
You did?
Yeah.
Am I only seeing the...
No, so Michael,
Yeah.
if you're using a different version of the PowerPoint, it doesn't necessarily.
Oh, it says my sharing is paused. Hold on. Huh.
And this is a PDF document, not a PowerPoint.
So, how about now?
Yep, that looks
We're good.
Okay.
good.
All right. I don't know what happened there. All right. So we have our 4 haulers, WCA, who is our current curbside collector for residential. They were recently bought out by a Canadian company, so they're turning into a bigger company. Waste Pro operates in town. They're based in the Orlando area, but they serve throughout the Southeast United States. Republic is the 2nd largest hauler here in the U.S. And then we have 1 smaller operator, and that's Florida Express, and they're based out of Ocala. So we went ahead and took a look at the business and how it's broken up, and did some estimates on who has the business. So as you can see, WCA has the highest percentage of customers and they have an even higher percentage of the waste stream. That's generally due to the fact that they have some of the larger customers. While Waste Pro and Republic, are in the 14, 15, 19 area. They have the smaller customers, so they have a little smaller percentage of the waste stream. And then Florida Express has fewer customers, but they do have the largest customer in town, and that's the Alachua County School Board. So one of the things that we're finding out there when it comes to the business is there's a lot of wide ranges of pricing. So when we talk to customers, when they talk to us about issues they have, and we ask about pricing and see what's going on, there is a wide range of pricing for similar types of service throughout our community. And generally, those that are a little more savvy, that are a little larger, are able to get better pricing for their service. So it's really not fair that some of these other businesses don't get that same pricing. And then also multiple companies often drive to the same location. So I think like Butler Plaza is the best example of this. If you look behind some of those strips over there in that area, you'll see that these companies drive, to one business and then another company drives to the next business. So obviously not very environmentally or operationally efficient. And then, like I mentioned, open market can at times create a situation where a large company is kind of taking advantage of a small company, and some of our businesses get into agreements that are not to their best interest. So here's a list of some of the things, and I'll go a little more in detail over the next few slides. The reduced traffic, reduced emissions, which is another goal of the city, better pricing for customers. Often when you combine the commercial and multifamily, you can get a better pricing at curbside. Also, legal standards have been stronger for cities that have entered into exclusive agreements and controlling that flow. Multifamily recycling can be improved, a little better customer service, and when they're operating outside of the contract, we can get uniform containers and messaging. We have a lot better control over the type of trucks that get used. We want to continue with CNG. We can address the age and the size of trucks also. And also it creates a partnership, and we're able to address unique situations as they become available. So flow control. So as we move towards zero waste, the city may decide to take on ways of handling the waste that are not necessarily as cheap as landfilling that waste. So when you need that control over the waste to be able to direct waste to those facilities. And though Ocala is kind of isolated in many ways, and there's not a heck of a lot of options out there for a hauler to send their waste elsewhere, if that price increases, there are chances of that. And even though I'm not a lawyer, I can tell you that from my years of experience, it's the communities that have had the exclusive contract, that have the contractual obligation to handle that waste, have stood the best up in court. Reduced traffic benefits. So obviously, as I mentioned, the same truck will service all the dumpsters in an area. There won't be this wear and tear on the road with these heavy trucks, less truck emissions, and we're going to convert everyone to CNG, and then we'll have that efficiency. We actually are working with We Are Neutral here in town to quantify some of those greenhouse gas reductions from getting that efficiency, and then also from converting everyone to a CNG vehicle. So they're working on that. It's kind of a new thing that hasn't been done before. So hopefully we'll have those results soon. Customer pricing. So like I mentioned before, we get 200-300% differences in pricing, say for a 2 cubic yard dumpster in town. A lot of times, it's not a big item when a business starts into business, and I want to get my garbage. I just want to get garbage, and the salesman comes by and I sign up. But one of the problems we have with the contracts in town is what they call evergreening. So these are automatic renewals for the garbage contract. So if the customer is not satisfied with that service, they usually would have to wait till the end of their contract. However, if they don't notify the vendor in time in a certain window, that contract will automatically renew. And then once again, they're stuck with that service that they might not be happy with. And also we see a lot of times fuel fees and other fees that really, don't have any reason out there. So and that's one of the things we would like to eliminate with an exclusive agreement. And the good part of that is the exclusive agreement becomes a contractual relationship with the city. So we're involved with those customers, the multifamily and the commercial, and we can all work together as a partner, and that way that is an efficient and better service to the customer, creates uniformity in the contract, and then also staff can have more input, both from the hauler side when they have difficulty with customers not paying and things like that. A lot of times when a city employee goes in and discusses it with them, things can be easily resolved. And the same thing on the other side. If a customer's having continual problems with that hauler, we can act on their behalf to get things resolved. Multifamily recycling is probably one of the biggest things that we'll be able to address through an exclusive agreement. Multifamily residents, about 50% of the housing units here in town, basically because of UF. There's a lot of lack of consistency and infrastructure in our multifamily recycling, and the UF Office of Sustainability tells us that's the #1 complaint they get is the off-campus recycling situation. So I'm sure you've all been out and seen some of the multifamily recycling situations from time to time. There's nothing uniform about the programs. Some have the dual stream program like we have at the curbside. Others have the single stream. Generally, the customer is charged by the cost of container, which sometimes that multifamily manager doesn't want to pay for that additional service. The type and how new the containers are is often a challenge, and they're not labeled well. And then, of course, we as a city cannot create a uniform education and messaging because of this, because each facility is so different and we have really no idea what's really going on in many cases. So some of the negatives. So obviously with anything, there are some drawbacks. Some customers will probably pay more if we enact an exclusive solid waste franchise. Larger customers, a little more savvy customers may be able to get better prices. The large multifamily communities that have multiple properties, probably may end up paying more. The companies that are currently operating in town would still be able to conduct some business. For example, a state statute prohibits the franchising of commercial recycling. However, with the garbage business going away from them, they may actually withdraw from the community, which could, increase the price for, say, recycling collection from the commercial and multifamily sector. If there is a problem with the contractor, it would affect everybody instead of just certain portions of the community. And then it makes it more difficult for locals to start up and enter the business. In the system we have now, if you have a truck or two, you can actually, get into business and start building that up. So that's kind of where we are with that. We're still continuing to move forward with the idea of an exclusive franchise here in town. And that's my presentation.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions out there on the presentation? I do have do you mind unsharing your screen?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Seeing other questions, I do have questions on the preemption. So you mentioned we are preempted from franchising recycling, but we can franchise salt waste?
Yes.
What about is there preemption on compost or no?
No, well, how I'm going to have the exclusive franchise written is that material set aside for compost will be exempt from the exclusive franchise.
Now, why do that, I guess?
But the definition of solid waste under Florida statute would, if you broadly gave the solid waste exclusive franchise, it could include that, and there could be issues between the hauler and those working to collect compost, material for compost.
Do you mind saying that again? Or
So the state statute for solid waste would include that material.
yeah.
And so if you offered a broader exclusive on solid waste without an exemption that that provides for someone else to pick up that food waste for collection, then that exclusive hauler may say that I have a right to collect that material.
Okay. And then so if this does go to if we do exclusive for multifamily and others, so how would that contract work? Would they be reaching out to the business and they be signing up, or would it be?
Yeah, and
okay.
The contract would include a transition plan. Yeah, so there would be a transition plan. They would tell us how they would do it, but yeah, they would go out to each business, sign them up, identify the service that they have, provide at least that level of service to start off with.
And that would be just for solid waste, but they would offer, I assume, other service, recycling and composting as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. But we wouldn't be regulating the pricing for those.
Correct.
Okay. But under our ordinance, okay, but if we had an ordinance, we could mandate that maybe they already have to have recycling, correct?
Right. So yeah, the legislature specifically carved out, the recovered materials on that.
Okay.
So.
All right. Thank you. I don't know who is first, Commissioner Ward or Sacco?
Ward.
Sacco? Ward. Okay, Ward. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I have not spoken with department managers about this. Has anybody done the rounds on that to kind of get a feel for what participation might be and how I would like to, whatever we do, I would like it to be as universally accepted as possible and take the path of least resistance but greatest benefit. There's no point in getting into an argument about it if that's going to slow us down. But I would like to find out what the fastest way to the best result is. Has anybody had those conversations? I mean, I'm happy to go do that if no one else has.
If I can just jump in,
Yeah.
Commissioner, I think at the point where we know what path we're going to go down, and we've got a few more of our answers answered or questions answered,
Okay.
then I think having a virtual public hearing or public meeting where we can invite the business community and the apartment owners to sort of hear a presentation, ask some questions would probably be the best venue. I will tell you that having gone through this once before, there will be winners and losers. On there will be some units or businesses which will find that there's an increase in costs, and there will be some that find that there's a savings. Mostly the increase in costs is centered around businesses that have undersized or underpicked up sanitation services. So right now in the free market, when two businesses or two haulers are competing, okay, the easiest thing to do is to reduce the cost by making you have a smaller dumpster with less frequent pickups, which leads to blight type concern issues. So where you're going to see the biggest increase in cost is those apartment houses and businesses that need to right size dumpsters and pickups in order to make sure that they're not creating any sort of sanitary nuisance. And so we will have the meeting where everybody comes out and tells us how bad we are on there, and we'll just need to be prepared for that. But this is, ultimately this option will give us the best control of the sanitation system, create the greenest sanitation system that we can have, and address the situations where we see blight because of the way that it's picked up now. This is this is an industry that eats their own young, so we will anticipate that that there's going to be some industry pushback as well.
Okay, I don't mind the pushback. I mean, I've gotten used to people telling me how bad I am. That's not a big deal. It's the question is, how do we get, what I want to get to is how we get the best result the fastest. So, all right, thank you.
Yeah, we're gearing up for an October 1st, 21 rollout, which would tie in when our current agreements expire. Hopefully we can move fast enough to get this done in that time.
Great.
All right, Commissioner Sacco.
So I'm going to be hated for a second. Can we reiterate what the whole exemption is, or could I have it sent to me on the recycling?
Yeah, I can send you the state statute on that for sure.
Okay. And so my concern is, because I've dealt with a lot of students that, and I've had complaints about this long before I was on here, that if they live in a multifamily dwelling, that they'll have one bin at the corner of the whole building, of the complex, and that's it. That's your recycling for cardboard. And it's already full 2 days in because kids eat pizza and put in pizza boxes, even though you shouldn't. So when we say that if we go towards a franchise, this could be impacted detrimentally, I have concerns about that, because my concern is that multifamily have recycling, but have sufficient recycling, kind of like what Lee was saying, that they're downsizing to a certain amount because it's the cheapest option, but they need to go up to a certain amount so that it's adequate. And so that we do capture all of that material that could be recycled.
Right. So the contract that we're developing now specifically addresses that, and is specifically beneficial for multifamily. Number one is the contractor will bid on a price to provide service to that building on a per unit price. So the more units, the more revenue they'll get. In turn, the city will determine what containers they have, and we're going to work with the property manager to place them. So the vendor is going to get their money up front, and the customer is going to get charged based on the number of units. So they can't really increase or decrease service per se. And so the vendor will be guaranteed their income, and that way that we can work with them to work on the capacity at each facility.
Okay. So when you say it could be a vendor that pulls out and no longer wants to deal with all of our regulations.
It's basically for the commercials, what I meant. So yeah, so what we'll do is we tie the recycling in because the multifamily is not commercial under that state definition. So they will have to provide that recycling service. The exclusive contract will provide the recycling collection to those multifamily locations. They will charge on a per unit basis, not on how many carts or whatever they have there. And then we'll be able to work cooperatively with the vendor and with the property manager to maximize that recycling.
Okay, never mind then. We're good. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just to confirm that, so what you just said, the state preemption does not include multifamilies.
Right. Because that's considered residential.
Really commercial.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I apologize for that.
No, that's fair. So what is the kind of timeline on this? I guess one other question too is on the, actually, no, that's yeah. So I guess what is the timeline on this in terms of getting this out? And then I know we talked about it at the last city county meeting, but also getting it for the commission and having the meeting you were talking about, Manager Feldman as well with the public too.
Michael and Phil have given me a timeline, which I think is aggressive. So I'm looking at that now. There's a couple of things I want to, look at with regard to the RFP, and I haven't had a chance to talk to Phil or Michael about this. So we're going to have to, work through on that timeline. But I think we're looking to get, a vendor on board by April at the latest, so that they have time to transition into the service for an October 1st deadline. So we're hoping to, use the subcommittee here as a vehicle for having the commission discussion, and then moving forward with it. But there's a couple of things I still want to explore. So, Michael just mentioned like the vendor, being guaranteed their payment. I may want to look at having the vendor take over the billing for this and be responsible for billing and collection. So
that's our intention
about it, right? So, so there are just different things that I want to explore in the next couple of weeks to get this thing all firmed up.
So I guess then on timeline you expect to kind of bring it before the full commission sometime in November? Would that be kind of your timeline?
Probably first meeting in December.
First meeting in December. Okay. All right. And that would be bringing the RFP to the or the decision of doing this or not, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, whether you want to do exclusive or not. I don't want the commission to get into wordsmithing an RFP.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, I'm fully supportive of going towards an exclusive contract. I think it meets multiple of our goals, from Vision Zero to reducing emissions, climate change, and also is one of the things that has to kind of be done to get to zero waste too. The studies have shown that there's a significant increase in waste recovery and waste reduction when you do this, and to the point about the blight too of overfilling dumpsters and stuff like that. Commissioner Sacco?
Yeah, so just a question related to yours where, we know this is good, but in Florida, we tend to know a lot of things are good and then not do them. Are there other cities or municipalities in Florida that are moving towards this kind of franchise system? Or can we point to any others, or are we going to be the first and be sued?
Oh, no.
There's many exclusives out there. There hasn't been we were researching it. There hasn't been a recent conversion of this, but it's common throughout the state to have exclusive franchises.
Well, when I was the manager in Palm Bay, we had a exclusive franchise all around. And that was I was there from 2002 to 2011. Never had a challenge.
Just not any recent ones. But
no,
there are plenty who have done it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Is there any more questions? Is there any public comment on this?
So for public comment, feel free. If there's a member of the public, I only have that one person on the attendee list. So if you'd like to raise your hand, I think you're on the computer, so you should be able to just use the system controls to raise your hand. But if you are on a telephone, you can dial *9, and that will raise your hand to make comment. If we wait just a moment. Okay, there does not seem to be any public comment.
All right, well, thank you very much, and look forward to this, I guess, coming back when you've kind of got more decisions that you've made. All right, next item, Madam Clerk.
200381, discussion of organic waste in Gainesville, with the recommendation that the Zero Waste Subcommittee hear and accept the staff presentation and provide direction to staff.
All right, thank you. So this is kind of combined to a few different things, and I'll let Mr. Hembach kind of take over if you want to do some presentations. I think you have one on our current kind of USD pilot project, and then kind of the overall one on kind of zero or on organic waste.
Yeah, let me get going. I think that's the right one. No, that is not the right one. Okay, how about that? That's the right one, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Oop.
All right, so yeah, so food waste. So probably one of the most, important topics we need to address
Yeah.
here is in the zero waste subcommittee.
So Michael, we
Yeah.
just have your desktop now.
We had the presentation, then it went away.
Hold on. How about there?
We're good.
Okay. I moved it in front of me there. Oh no, hold on. Let's try again. All right, how about that?
Perfect.
Yeah,
This is why Michael's in charge of sanitation.
I'm not going to be in IT anytime soon. All right, so just kind of basically looking at some broad numbers on municipal solid waste generated. Food waste takes up about 15% of that, which is obviously a big chunk of it. When you add in the yard trimmings, which we're already addressing, we're doing a good job of recycling that now. And then with the paper and paperboard, you have a lot of soiled paper and paperboard that doesn't get recycled. So all of that can really fall into a composting plan. And obviously, diverting some of that food waste before it becomes waste is also important. I included a couple slides here on just some of the hierarchy. Here's the EPA. Obviously source reduction is the number one thing to do, feeding people second, animals, and then they get into some of the more industrial uses such as converting to energy, composting, and obviously landfilling and incineration. Landfilling clearly being the worst when it comes to food waste. The methane generated in a landfill from food waste is multiple times greater than the greenhouse gases that are done by other products in the landfill. Here's one from the Institute for Self-Reliance, a little more detailed. Obviously source reduction, food rescue, they got some home composting going on in there. The smaller scale decentralized composting, and then just kind of builds up there to anaerobic digestion and kind of some sorting out of the waste stream before it's landfilled and then landfill and incinerating. So the current infrastructure. So we're very fortunate here in Gainesville that there's already a lot of infrastructure and things happening with regards to food waste diversion and composting and other things. So Organics is a company that is at least operates in the Southeast. They might be a national company. They are a hauler of food waste, and what they do is they find markets for it. So it could be composting, it could be anaerobic digestion, it could be feed for animals. Right now, their only customer in town that we're aware of is Walmart, and that material is going to feed animals. So they found a market, they pick it up, and they provide that service in town. Another one is the bread or the Mighty Food Bank, which I'm sure you guys are all familiar with. Their customers include Publix and Whole Foods. Annually, they do about 15 million pounds of food. They run over 100 collection stops here in North Central Florida. And they also have a program, it's kind of in disarray, obviously, because of COVID, where volunteers collect from local restaurants and bring that food directly to people in need. Composters. So we got a couple operating in town right now. UF works with Watson, which also handles yard waste and construction demolition debris. They got a facility down towards the Levy County line. And so they take UF's food waste and yard waste and they create a compost. They haven't had a lot of good luck marketing that compost. It's not their primary operation. but they are a big player here in the community as far as accepting that waste. The other one is much smaller, and it's the one that we'll be working with on our pilot program is Beaten Path Compost. They're a small community composter that collects waste around, food waste around town. They have a couple drop-offs, and they also offer pickup service from residential and commercial facilities. And one of the reasons we decided to work with them on that grant is their demand is greater than the supply. So he is producing a compost. He cannot create enough compost to meet the demand in the community for his product. And also recently learned that Life Soils, which is a rather large company that creates a compost, is seeking to locate to Alachua. They actually, when I spoke to them, when I did this PowerPoint, they were looking at some property in Newberry that has since changed. They are looking at a property here in the city of Gainesville on the north side of town. So they would be getting, I think, between 10 and 12 acres up here to locate and process both biosolids, yard waste, and food waste. That obviously is an opportunity for GRU, which has, been working on doing things with their biosolids also. Food waste, and they're excited about working with us on food waste. We've talked about possibly doing a pilot with them also in WCA with a more traditional style of collection at the curb with a cart and yard waste. So when they get that facility up and running, we'll probably be able to work something out with them. And again, they have a high demand for their product. That's why they're expanding. They know what we're doing here in Gainesville, so they're excited. So they're making the investment in the community in advance to take advantage of what we're doing. And, I always like to point out the customers, they've got their products on the swamp over here at UF, and they've also done some work with the Miami Marlins. And I'd also point out there's no infrastructure for it, but anaerobic digester is also a possibility. It would take some investment. They can process both food waste and biosolids, creates a renewable energy, which is another goal of the city, creates the compost. And it's actually a little higher on the EPA pyramid, though it's lower on the Institute for Self-Reliance. I see Commissioner Ward has his hand raised.
Commissioner Ward, sorry about that.
That's all right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Life Soils rings a bell. Are we not, is Jerry, you not working with them already?
Somebody's probably working with them. They've been coming around town a lot. Yeah. We had a presentation at the Joint Water Committee a year ago, probably. And probably
I
then.
What the company was.
Yeah.
I think it was them, and they have a plant in Bradford
Sumter
County, I want to say.
Sumter, Bradford, one of those. Yeah, down there.
I can't remember who it was, but Life Soils rings a bell.
Yeah, I believe that's them. One of the principals lives here in Alachua County. I think he lives in the city.
That's the one.
They're really interested in our market.
Okay. And on the anaerobic digester, when you said there's a cost, obviously there's a cost. Do you have a ballpark of what that cost would be?
I'd have to go back and look and get just some tonnage and volumes on that.
That's fine. Thank you.
Commissioner Ward, on Live Soils, I do remember the conversation. So it was talking about how they were interested in coming to our area. Okay. They're not the ones I think GRU used now. I think the mayor went down to see their facility either a couple of years ago or a year ago as well down there as well. So they put their soil limits on like Florida Field and stuff like that too.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
So as I started off with, there's infrastructure here in place. So anything that the city wanted to move forward with, there is some capacity out there, and there is capacity coming to town. Many folks are already participating in food waste diversion and composting, including our biggest producers here in town: Publix, Walmart, Whole Foods, those two processors in particular are looking for more material. So there is a demand for their product. There's two really issues with composting and the success of a composting plant is eliminating contamination and developing a product that has a strong market. So we're seeing a lot of that here in town, and we also see a lot of capacity from our nonprofits that are able to collect food and keep it from getting into the waste stream. So as we move forward, you know, and kind of discussing some of those issues, some of the things that I think that probably need to be hashed out are, you know, do we have a minimum size that a business is required to participate in or a food waste program? If someone donated their food, would they also have to compost their food waste? You know, and obviously what kind of facilities are covered, restaurants, obviously, and grocery stores, but schools, food distributors, hospitals, you know, and those sort of things as we move forward. And as we move into single family, hopefully in the future for food waste, you know, is that an optional program where that resident pays a little more, or is it mandatory? You know, do we have exemptions for home composting? So those sort of things need to be discussed. And then the other side is creating a market for that material. So when the zero waste plan starts to come out, you'll see that one of the objective is for government to facilitate in the marketing of compost. Alachua County started down that path recently on a soil amendment ordinance, and I have the draft in the backup. And what that does is their ordinances generally, if you put in a new home of a certain size, you have to use this material instead of, you know, artificial fertilizers and that sort of thing. And that soil amendment, you know, obviously helps us meet other goals, which is water use and stormwater runoff and fertilizer use. So that's one way to help create a market on the other side for that material. And then, as I mentioned before, when the contract we're working on is going to specifically exempt food waste put out for composting as part of the solid waste agreement. And we are going to get a pricing for the future for the collection of food waste along with yard waste at the curb. And even though we don't know a lot, we do know that the folks in town like to get that food waste collected separately from the yard waste. So we're kind of, and right now a lot of the yard waste is collected at the curb by hand in rear loads. So we're kind of anticipating a program where there's a rear load truck that has, you know, a divider, a dual load, and then the vendor could put the food waste on one side, the yard waste in the other, and then take it to the facility. So we're hoping that won't be a lot more expensive than the service we're getting now. And that's it. And I'll unshare.
All right. Thank you very much for the presentation. Do I see anything? Commissioner Sacco, is that a finger raised or no? Or,
yeah.
Okay. Or a pin raised?
Do you want me to use the raise hand function, or just?
That'd probably be easier, yeah, I guess.
Okay.
And if I don't see it, then start waving.
Okay. So just to clarify back up on what we currently have, there's only one program that does food diversion, right? That does like whole food. I will move edible food to a food bank.
They're the major one in town, yes. There might be a couple smaller ones that we haven't identified, but yeah, that's pretty accurate.
So would there be other, and I saw like the ordinances that are in place in other places. So I guess my question would be, if we create such an ordinance that kind of forces restaurants and grocery stores to seek out those partnerships because they're obligated to, versus how else do we facilitate that partnership as a city is my question. Like ordinance aside, how else do we facilitate that, like encourage that partnership of, if you have food, Winn-Dixie, please just donate it. Is there another suggestion besides mandating that they seek it out?
So there are, I think, a couple good examples around the country. Philadelphia has a program which is run by a not-for-profit, so that the entity can actually take a tax advantage on the value of the donated food, which also creates an incentive to participate in the program. I think it is in San Diego County, California. I think it's the city of Chula Vista has a program also, and they partner with Uber to help transport food from restaurants to food banks as well. So I think there's a couple of different models around which they're done on a volunteer basis, creating some sort of tax incentive to participate. Everything from hotels that may be having banquets that have extra food left over, to restaurants, to grocery stores. Those seem to be the three big drivers.
Is just checking. Do we know if Bread of the Mighty is it's a nonprofit, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Nonprofit. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, I mean, I definitely believe that we should put in an ordinance that allows us to capture all of the kind of hierarchies. I mean, whole countries have put in food diversion kind of programs so that food that's still edible is gotten to people who need it. And right now it's a wasted, something's put in the trash, let alone being composted. I know Publix used to compost it, now they don't.
Right.
And I think they do get rid of some of their food, but I think making like hotels and caterers, there's a lot of different places that are kind of left out of this. And I don't think we'll have a fully functioning kind of ability to get food to people who need it without an ordinance that is kind of mandatory to do that. And when you do that, an ecosystem is created too, a part of that. So I strongly believe that we should try to have staff come back, I guess, in a month, if we can hit on this topic in a month, and then just kind of what are some programs that and options that could be a good fit for us, because there are a variety of different ones out there. And then secondary, look at other ones of if it's not going to go towards animals, then it should go, or not go towards people, it should go towards animals. And then also a mandatory kind of composting, similar to what other cities around the country have done. Food waste is one of the biggest contributors in towards greenhouse gases when it goes to a landfill. This is one of the ways we can reduce it significantly by making sure that waste is composted. And I do believe we should have a mandatory kind of composting in places that produce food, kind of large like restaurants and cafeterias and grocery stores and places like that. They should have to compost that food. They shouldn't just throw it into the garbage, which a vast majority of it is. And then also in the single family, I do think we should have curbside composting. Is something that a lot of people have been asking for. I've been to other cities and been there, and it works well. I was just in Austin last week, and they have one container that they actually put all their yard waste and composting in, and it seems to work well. They spent, I think, 3 or 4 years kind of phasing it into the whole entire city. And then I also think in the multifamily areas too. I mean, it's a huge portion of our housing. It's one of the more difficult areas, but I think one of the things is making sure wherever there's like a place where people put their trash and recycling, there's also a composting place there too. That's how you make it effective and efficient and easy. And also I think for those apartment complexes is giving them like a container or something like that. That's one of the things too, is shown to show an increase in composting and in recycling, is when either the city or the landlord has to give them a container.
Right.
And then I think one of the things too, and also looking at in restaurants and grocery stores too, is not restaurants, specifically ones that are to go and ones where you're doing self-clearing, is also having composting that has to be available there as well, if you are a restaurant where you do self-clearing. So you're really capturing all of the waste. And then looking at our own side, where we have our public places, sidewalks and parks and things like that. I don't have them everywhere, but I do think that like in areas where we do have a lot of people walking around who are carrying food, such as downtown, midtown, areas where there's high pedestrian usage, having composting available and around there, I think would be effective. And then also looking at kind of our public spaces, like in parks where food is being used, like in pavilions or barbecue pits, or kind of around like our stadium, our seating and stadiums, kind of people watching things where food is kind of being consumed. That's also where I think we should have composting. That would allow us to capture a huge portion of it and really have an effective ordinance and moving us towards zero waste and also reducing our greenhouse gases. Commissioner Sacco?
So I like the idea of having composting at restaurants and grocery stores. Like if the food isn't consumable, that it has to be composted. My concern with the putting it in multifamily dwelling. So when you said that the city or the complex gives them a bin, are you meaning a smaller bin per unit?
Yeah, like a little small thing that they can carry to the
Okay, that's what I wanted to say, because from
Yeah.
personal experience,
Yeah.
I can tell you people won't do it if they have to, like, haul it across the building, or they'll just mix it and then do it poorly. But if
Yeah.
you have a smaller bin, that's like a
something
bucket.
that's handheld and carryable.
Yeah,
but-
if you have like a little bucket that you have to be provided, that I'm all for that. But because my concern is you can fine a restaurant if they don't obey the ordinance. In a larger building, if they mix it up and don't compost correctly, how do you determine which of the 200 units did it poorly? So do you fine the whole complex for not instructing their residents? Or, how? That's one of my concerns, because I know, again, from experience, that if you put the wrong thing in the compost bin, the whole thing kind of falls apart. So that would be one of my concerns when we move to family dwelling is, how do we ensure that I hate to say this, how do you ensure the proper education component? So that the whole system in a multifamily doesn't get messed up. So in a restaurant, you can instruct, your staff of a dozen, this is company policy, you do it. If we do it wrong, who did it wrong. How do you do that in a larger complex? And that would be my one concern, because otherwise I love the idea of each unit having their tiny container and then having it available. I love the idea of having it in parks and in our more pedestrian areas, so that you could have, you have waste recycle composting. I like that. It would just be an extra bin. So I'm in favor of all of the suggestions. My one concern was, I can tell you right now that in recycling, again, people can't be bothered to not put paper in the plastic. So how do you get someone to not put meat in composting bins?
Yeah, I think that's one of the difficulties. You can't put meat in there, though. You can. The industrial ones, you can actually put full-size bones in.
Yeah.
Okay, did not
Pretty
know
much
that.
all organic. Yeah, they can deal with pretty much anything. That is a concern that you brought forward, and I think something that I don't know if there's a super. I don't know if Mr. Strickland, you put your hand up. I don't know if I was to answer that question or not, but
yeah, just the tolerance level of contamination in compost is much lower than recycling. Recycling, you have the opportunity at some point that somebody's going to handle that by hand or be able to get those wrong things out of there. Composted usually goes straight to a facility and added to a pile. So there's not really the opportunity to take those contaminants out. So the tolerance level for contamination is very low in composting.
And I think one of the things too is looking at piloting certain things and trying different things, and maybe multifamily and other places have done it. We are pretty far behind when it comes to doing composting. But I know multifamily is probably one of the hardest ones out of any of them.
Could we pilot in multifamily?
Yeah, I mean, we could do whatever we want to do. Yeah.
Well, that's a lie. I know that one. But okay. My worry is that contaminant, but if you're saying industrial composting can handle a lot more, then maybe the margin of error is lower.
I think one of the biggest things that I've heard, and I can correct me if I'm wrong, is that contamination of products that say that they're compostable when they actually aren't, or they're eco-friendly, and people believe that they're compostable when they actually aren't. And that's that's one of the major issues. I'm understanding it definitely. And I think University of Florida had issues. I believe they've kind of resolved them over the years, but they had a bunch of forks that they thought were recyclable or compostable, but they weren't. And they were all sticking out of the compost. And then they had to figure out an actual vendor that actually sold the correct compostable forks and stuff.
Yeah, and I will add, Life Soils has indicated that the technology is evolving to deal with a little more contamination. So they're hopeful on that also.
Commissioner Ward?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I was going to say a lot of the same things. I mean, if we could get the market to be a little more specific and honest about what really is compostable or recyclable and under what conditions, because they're not, for the most part, they're not lying. Most of those things are compostable or recyclable under the very best conditions with the very best equipment that communities like ours are never going to be able to afford. So it really does roll back to an education system. And I hate to put everything on the communications department, but that's really where this is. Anything we do in this regard is going to win or lose based on how well we educate people. If we get more people to do what Mr. Mann does and put the correct logos behind us as a background, we'd get farther ahead. But that's where we win or lose is how well we tell the story. If people really understand that just because it has recyclable stamped on the bottom or compostable stamped on the bottom, you got to know a little more about it, because people are willing to do it. They just honestly have no idea. So there you go. Thanks.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. And I think that's one of the good things about us doing these kind of things citywide, and hopefully countywide as well, if all the recycling is the same across the whole area, all the waste stuff is, no matter where you are in the city, it's the same. We can actually put out a coherent message, and it's not this kind of weird thing everywhere. And I think that's one of the main things I think in doing kind of all these ordinances. So, Mr. Mann?
Mr. Hayes, I can't find a raise my hand button.
Okay, all right.
So I looked all over. I just wanted to bundle both things together because we're having a really great discussion about the food waste. And you go back to the first presentation where we then take over control of all the commercial and multifamily residential collections. That gives us a lot more flexibility to do these kind of programs. And I think that's where the public works staff wants to head. And I believe that's the direction the commission wants to head as well, as the more we control this, the more flexibility we have to provide different types of programs, do different kinds of experiments. Because right now, we really don't have access to the commercial or the multifamily. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I guess on next steps on this, my thoughts were to give staff some time to come back, and not our next meeting, but the meeting after that in a month, and to come back with some kind of options for what a food recovery program could look like here in Gainesville. And then also looking at kind of what would it sounds like this support for a robust kind of composting ordinance as well, and maybe not writing out the whole composting ordinance, but right where are the kind of the decision points and kind of what are staff thoughts. Does that sound okay to the commission or to the committee?
You want two different ordinances?
I don't think
Or
you should
one ordinance.
I guess just to come back with kind of options on what would I do think I don't know if one big ordinance we do that includes all the zero waste stuff, or we do separate ones. I don't know what's best, but I think we still need to get some more information on kind of exactly what the recovery program would look like and stuff like that. What would that kind of mandatory one, are we even allowed, are we preempted from doing a mandatory ordinance on that or not? So.
No, it's the same as, the commercial, mandatory recycling, it'd be the same.
Okay. So any other thoughts on that? Does that sound good? All right. Any other public discussion on this item on organics in our community?
Okay, so if you are a member of the public and would like to make comment, if you're on your computer, you can raise your hand using the system, or on the phone, do a star, dial *9, and that will raise your hand. Let's wait just a few moments to see if anyone. Our one person in the attendee list is not raising their hand, so I don't believe we have any comment.
All right. And my goal, hopefully, is that the information we get at the next meeting, we can give pretty clear direction to start kind of on the ordinance drafting and really kind of solidify it, hopefully. There aren't too many decision points. All right, next item.
Is item 200412, discussion topics for future meetings, with the recommendation that the Zero Waste Committee discuss future topics and develop a schedule for future meetings.
All right, so we need to kind of decide on what we're talking about at the future meetings, and definitely since we need to give time for staff to come back on, we kind of got to layer them along. Staff is thinking about doing construction and demolition at the next meeting, and then I guess we could just go along that list. I don't know if you've seen the agenda, is we kind of every 2 weeks we take these along, and then we're going to have, like, we're also going to talk about composting in a month from now too, so they're going to be layered apart. Does that sound, Commissioner Ward?
Yeah, that's good. What I don't want us to do is build out a little niche with staff and for this not to be part of the larger discussion. I want everybody who needs to be involved at this level, so that when we get to the full commission level, nobody is surprised by it. And everybody's schedules are overfilled already. I understand that, but I would really like to see if we can include communications in these meetings, as well as a representation from GRU. If what we do is going to be successful, it needs to be a one Gainesville approach, and a county approach too. So the more we can bring on and involve staff from multiple departments and charters in these subcommittee meetings, the better our effort is going to be, and the simpler the path will be once it gets to the full commission and into the community. So, thanks.
I think that's a good point. Commissioner Sacco?
So I was speaking with someone about foodware ordinances, and I know we're preempted from dealing with certain foodware items, but I was like straws.
Oh, okay.
But they wanted to know if we'd be able to explore other ordinances with restaurant, like if you have prepared food, do you use just like disposable plates? What do you do with that? Because some places will serve you on styrofoam, and that's it. And it was an exploration of Berkeley has an ordinance where if you're a sit-down place, you must use foodware of a certain caliber. And that kind of goes around preempting. It could, in theory, go around the preemptions because you're not banning styrofoam or plastic straws or anything. You're just saying it's a different way of phrasing it. So I don't know where we could put that, or if we could put that somewhere on the meeting list, kind of to revisit where we are with foodware, what is preempted, what isn't preempted, what we could do in terms of prepared food sit-down places to kind of reduce the
I think that's
materials.
That's a great point. I had some other kind of ways of looking at preemptions as well. Of if you're going to do styrofoam, then you have to have styrofoam recycling and plastic bag recycling on site, which are not cheap as well. So it kind of reduces some of the incentive for them to have it as well. So yeah, I guess we could look at. I mean, we probably should have a single-use plastics kind of discussion. I think that should be one of the items. So would that cover
I think so.
Okay. I also think one of the things that we should cover as well is a major kind of thing is on reuse as well.
Yeah.
Because there are reuse programs that I've looked at around the country, and I think things that we could hear, and we do have some players in the city too who want to expand like reuser and not reuser. It's on 16th Avenue. I'm talking about the big place where you can get a bunch of stuff to reuse.
Repurpose?
Repurpose project, yeah. They talked about expanding and being able to have retail stores and things like that, and looking at how can we collect and reuse these kind of things that still have life. So I think if we could add one single-use plastic and then reuse as well. Yeah.
So if I could, for the sake, I think, of clarity and getting more involvement from the appropriate parties, do you mind actually listing, I want to pull up the calendar and say, like, on this date, this is the topic, so that it's easier for staff and easier for the public if they want to join in on those topics, and just we set at least those 4 or 5 in stone and say, this is what we should come back on.
I think that works. Why don't we, is there a specific kind of dates, or we can have kind of just staff put them on the next, or just have a list at the next meeting that we can kind of confirm? Does that work? Or if you already have a list already made, then we can use that too. I just don't know all the dates of our next meetings.
I can look at a calendar. So our next meeting is the 27th, and that's going to be demolition.
Yeah.
Construction demolition. The meeting after that is the 10th of November, and we just asked staff to come back with food.
I think we do food and a new topic. I think every meeting we should be discussing a new topic as well, so that we can keep things moving.
Yep.
So
what do you want to put on that then?
I think either just commercial recycling, or we could do single-use plastics. So I think I'm open to, we need to touch all of these, so I'm open to, and I don't know if there's some that maybe can be put together. I don't know if commercial recycling, multi-family recycling could be one discussion item. I don't know if there's enough to discuss for just having one, so we could discuss both of those in that meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can do that. The meeting after that, it's November 24th.
Do you want to do the single-use plastics item on that one?
I think that's good.
Okay.
And the meeting after that would be December 8th.
We can do, we should discuss the reuse one then on that meeting.
The repurpose?
Or not repurpose, I think will be a part of the discussion, but just how do better, what's the way to phrase this, but.
Our own little ecosystem of like reusing items?
Yeah, reusing in our community, I guess, something in that sense of how do we create that infrastructure and the programs to reuse. Like some communities have like 1 day or 2 days a year, everyone puts out their stuff and you just drive by and pick stuff up. So it's kind of just like a swap for the whole city.
Okay.
There's different things like that too, yeah. And
then our last meeting of the year is the 22nd of December. I don't know if
we'll be on break.
Okay.
We should.
Hey, I'm just reading the calendar.
Yeah.
Okay, so otherwise we have the next 4 meetings as the year.
Okay. That sounds good. And then we can, as we get closer, then we can schedule the rest of them. That sound good?
No, to give staff good direction. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anything else on this? No? All right. So our next meeting is October 27th at 2 p.m. and we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.